Hey, y'all. How's it going? All right, so that was a lot to follow in after, right? So I need you to do me a favor. I need you to just kind of go with me for a second because I've got the wiggles because I'm a little nervous. So I need you to go ahead and get your wiggles out, wiggle your legs, stretch out, get comfy for a minute so that it feels way more relaxed in here because right now I'm terrified. Last week was awesome. Hopefully you guys were here. Hopefully you were here to experience it. It was amazing here. There were so many new faces, friends, everybody was here, and I know that Todd had such a great message. And so, how's the adventure? How's everything going? So, I really think that sometimes the words that you know how like, sometimes you shouldn't have your words held against you, like at a present moment. Last week, I was so high on the excitement from this place. The glow lights had me all crazy, and everybody here was so excited. And so when Todd was like, hey, can you do the message Sunday? I was like, I can do anything. And I was so excited, and then Monday came, and I was like, listen, I know what I said yesterday. We're really going to need to sit down and talk about it. And I really had like bullet points of all the things to convince him that maybe I shouldn't be held accountable for those words because they just flew out of my mouth. But he didn't buy them. And so all week I've just really, God obviously knew what I was kind of struggling with, or it's not even a struggle, it's just something I want to share with you guys because it's actually freeing and it's exciting and it goes along with your adventure because we're all on an adventure. God has you on a purpose. God has you on an adventure that's specific for you, the gifts that he has given to you, and what it is that he wants you to do in your journey for him. So, if we can, if y'all will just pray with me. Bow your heads, let me pray so that I can just get on the right page. Heavenly Father, I'm thankful that you have chosen this time for our friends to be here, gathered together to hear what it is that you have for us. God, I pray for open hearts, ready to receive whatever it is that you're going to speak to them about the exact adventure they're on, because I know that you're telling me and leading me and guiding me on my own adventure, God. I'm thankful for your voice that just constantly reverberates in my mind. Whenever I need you, you're there, and I am thankful for the love, mercy, and grace that you pour on us. God, we love you, we honor you, and we praise you. Amen. See, doesn't that feel better? All right, so I want to ask you guys a question that I want you to think about while I'm just talking up here and just rambling, but what are your fears? I've talked about this before, but this time it's different. The time before when I talked about fears, it was really about some specific anxiety-driven fears. This is different. What are your fears? If failure was not an option, you knew you would not fail, what would you do? Where would you be? Where would you be going on your adventure? If you could dream as big as you could, maybe even bigger than you can at this moment, what would it look like? Over the last 4 years, I've been on a journey, and the grieving process, well, it really stinks. And the grieving process, when you lose somebody, whether you've lost somebody through death, whether you've lost somebody through divorce, whether somebody just kind of phased out of your life at a particular moment, grieving, it stinks. It's hard. It's got highs, it's got lows, it's got places where you kind of feel like you're just stuck. And so over the last 4 years, I've gone through this process where I just feel like I've been asking God constantly, in the first period of the grieving process, I was just always a mess. I don't know how I got through that. I don't know how my children got through it, but it was just messy all the time. I'm thankful that God surrounded me with people who just accept me for who I am, for what I am, because God made me that way. I'm thankful for the love and just the grace that I was shown during this time period. And so then it kind of starts to change, and you're like, all right, well, this is life, and now I've got to figure it out from here. And so then it kind of starts to change, and you do start to grow. Life keeps going on, so you have to adapt and you have to figure out that adventure is no more. And now what does my new adventure look like? And so as I was going through the process, there were highs and there were lows. And going on 4 years, over the last year, I experienced a lot of healing. I'm thankful for the friends who listen to me constantly ramble on about probably the exact same thing, but it was definitely something that I had to talk out. It wasn't something that I could keep internalizing and just deal with and, suck it up, buttercup, and you're like, keep moving. But sometimes there's these things that you need to be able to voice. And so I did. And so over the last year, there was a lot of healing. And I was like, this is great. My kids were starting to tell me that I was fun again. And I'm like, well, I love that. I want to be a fun mom, but for a time period, it was hard to be a fun mom. To muster up a smile, the laughter that would happen in our house, it was kind of forced. And so over the last year of healing, we started to experience that joy again. And it's there. And it comes and goes, and sometimes when it would go, I was like, God, what's happening? We took a couple steps forward, and now we're taking some steps back. What's going on? And, I would always think that it was just me, and I'm doing something wrong. And it's always easier if you have a step-by-step process, right, to be able to check that off, and we should be good. We should be going on to the next phase. But life doesn't work that way, and grief definitely doesn't. And so I started to work through all of this stuff, and a friend, just at the beginning of this year, gave me a word that I'm like, it really put in concrete that it was time for specific things to start happening, and that's what I want to share with y'all today. Fear can be disguised as a lot of things. For me, fear was looking like excuses. Fear was looking at like reasons, and they were all really good reasons. Keeping me from something. See, during this process, in the very beginning, in the messy process, I chose many times not to hear direct things that God was speaking to my heart. But that's because those things were too much for me to handle at that time, or so I thought. Maybe that was my own fear. And then as it's gone on, I've started to hear his voice more and more. And sometimes he says things that are a little bit more challenging than I would like to admit. And so when he tells me things, I sometimes choose to make up a reason why that's not going to work, why I'm unqualified, why that doesn't fit my adventure, why that doesn't fit where I'm at today, why maybe I don't have the resources. I go to him with several reasons. Luckily, I have children who keep me accountable. A couple of weeks ago, we were going somewhere. I'm really shy, crazy, so this takes a lot. But with God, anything's possible, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we were going somewhere, and I got really nervous because I was going to be going somewhere completely out of my comfort zone, completely out of my element, just me and my 2 kids. So I started coming up with these reasons. I was like, y'all, that's kind of far. And I don't think we should do that. And my kids come back and they said, but you promised. So I was like, okay, I did promise. So, all right, so let me think of another thing. So then I made us really, really busy. And it's getting closer to time, and I know it's time for us to go, but I'm really busy, and I don't know if we're going to make it. And so that's what I told them. I was like, guys, I don't know if we're going to get to do that. And they're like, please, can we try? Even if we get there and it's already done, can we just try? I'm like, wow, they're kind of dedicated to this. So then I decided that I would just bribe them. And I was like, you know what, guys? If we don't go to this today, I'll take you to buy a toy. That always works for my 5-year-old. He's like, but you said, Mom. And right then, God checked me real quick and real hard, and he said, this isn't anything about them missing out on something. This is for you to get over your fear. It's time for you to go. So I called a friend, and I was telling her, I was like, dude, I've got to do this. I know that I do, but I'm so nervous. And she's like, what are you nervous about? You're going to go somewhere new? So what? That's all fine and dandy for somebody, to say from the outside. And so I want you guys to know when I'm telling you this, I understand from the outside it's always easier to tell you something than to live it out, walk it out, and experience it on your own. I get it. And so when she said, get over it, I was like, you're right. And so we walk in, and I tell my kids, literally, I'm at the door, and I'm going to try to convince him one more time. I was like, you do know when we go in here, you're going in there by yourself. I'm going to have to sit by myself, and you're sitting somewhere by yourself. Are you happy about that? And they were like, I don't care. They were probably at this point thinking, just get me away from you. So we go in, and my kids, who I'm clinging to at this point, I've got their hands, and I'm like, don't you leave me. They just take off. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? And so it was just one of those moments that it was direct fear of letting other people in this moment that was going to keep me from doing something that God had very clearly told me to do. I'd begged, I'd pleaded, I'd tried convincing, I'd used bribery. Nothing worked, but that's because he had a plan on this adventure for not just me, but for my children. So you see, if I was going to keep them from going to something, I was going to keep them from a moment of God using them in this adventure. And after we were on our way home, after we had a blast, it was a great day, had so much fun, I really was like, what was my problem? I was really willing to sacrifice a time period with God just so that I didn't have to overcome my own fear and get out of my comfort zone. So, you've got people that are around you that want to keep you accountable, that want to help you through. It's just, are you willing to let them in? That's part of my problem. See, as I've been over the last few weeks going through this stuff, part of my fear, it's not an anxiety-driven fear. It's just a fear of letting somebody in, letting somebody close to the problem, letting somebody know that it's probably going to be kind of messy if you want to hang out with me. I'm emotional. I cry a lot. I cry happy tears. I cry sad tears. I cry mad tears too. And I yell a lot and I ramble all the time. It's part of who I am. God made me unique. He made me with those qualities for a specific purpose. And so I have to drop the walls of fear and let people get close, let people in and say, this is just kind of how I am. How are you? What do you look like? Who's the real you? And so on our adventure, if we get caught up in our fears, then we're not able to do what God wants us to do on our journey for Him. So as I was kind of going through all of this, I started reading in Matthew 25. At verse 14, it starts, and it's telling a parable about some servants, and their master gives them some money. He gives one of the guys 5 talents. He gives another one 2 talents. And another one, he gives 1 talent. Now, a talent in Hebrew is used as a measure of weight. But this really started sticking out with me, and over the last couple weeks, I keep hearing the word talents, and it's just really sticking out with me because these servants, after the master gives it to them, he is giving it, in the Bible, it says, to each their ability. And so after he does that, he goes away. And so the men, what they do, the man who received 5 talents, he takes them and he trades them. And he makes 5 more. So he who had the 2 talents takes them and he does something with them. The other guy, the third guy, he takes his talent and he knows how important it is that his master chose him to receive this talent. And so he decides that he is going to bury it. He's going to bury it so nothing happens to it. He's going to make sure that when his master comes back to claim his money, that he has it all in full and he can proudly give it back to him. So soon the master, he comes back. And he asks them to bring forward their talents. One of them says, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. I invested, and here are 5 more. And he says, you have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. And he tells him, good job, my faithful servant. And he goes to the other guy who had 2 talents, and he comes and he says, listen, with your 2 talents, I did this. And he's like, that's awesome. And he calls him my faithful servant. You've been given little and you did much with it. And he goes to the third one, and this is where I got stuck. He goes to the third one and he says, what did you do with yours? And he said, I buried it and I saved it just for you. It didn't really say it just like that, but you can go and read. He says, I buried it, I saved it just for you. And the master says, why did you not do anything with it? Why did you not do something? And he says in verse 25, he says, I was afraid. And so I got stuck, because then I really started thinking, I get in the story, in the parable, a talent, it was money. But what if we start to think about the talents that you have been given? What if we start to think of those as God's resources? What if they're God's resources that he has given to you? His time, his energy, his money, your abilities are his. He has given them to you because, like in the verse, it says based on each's ability. He has designed you for a specific reason. He's given you specific abilities to be carried out on the journey, on this adventure that he has put you on that nobody else can do, but only you can do. So what are you going to do as his servant with the talents that he has given to you? Are you going to choose to be like the other two men who first of all take it and quickly go out, they invest their time, they go out and they give, they serve, they love others. They do what they can with what they've been given? Or do you sit like the third man? Because unfortunately, that's where I related myself to, was the third man. So afraid to mess up what God has given me that instead of doing anything at all, I just stop and I just stand there. And instead of going forward, because it might be considered taking a risk, I just stay in the safe zone. He didn't ask me to stay in a safe zone. You see, when he gave me the abilities that he has given me, it was for me to go out and do something for him. It was never to stay stationary in one spot. So then recently, as I was talking some of this out, I started to realize over the last 4 years, I have begged God, literally begged him to use me as long as. Use me as long as I don't need to get uncomfortable. Use me as long as I don't have to leave this town that I live in because all of my help is here and I don't want to have to pay for babysitters. Use me as long as it doesn't cost a lot. Oh, and use me as long as I don't have to talk to anybody that's going to make me feel really uncomfortable. So you see, over 4 years, I've been begging him, use me. And I tell people, I've just been begging him to use me all the time, and he just doesn't. I don't know why. Well, could it have anything to do with the fact that I have put limitations on him? God, use me, but my fear is keeping me from saying, use me in whatever way that you see fit. See, with the guys here, he knew what they could handle. He knew what they needed. And the same thing goes for the God who loves you, who created you, who designed you for a purpose. He knows exactly what it is that you're capable of. And his potential for you is far greater than the potential that you have in your own abilities. That's how it was supposed to be. Because we're never supposed to walk out and do it on our own. We're supposed to lean into the fact that he has a plan for you, that he knows exactly what he's going to be doing with you, for his kingdom. It's will I listen? Will I obey? Will I take that first step out of my fear and into something different? So just like the men with the talents, I really started thinking about just our own abilities and what are we doing? And I think that sometimes we get all caught up in the fact that it's got to be this big thing in order for it to be effective. And God is showing me very, very clearly that it isn't a big thing, that sometimes it's the baby steps along the way, that all of a sudden, after you've taken a few steps of obedience, just here and there, all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, I'm not there anymore. And I'm thankful that I'm here. And God, where do you want to take me next? So as I've been praying through some of this, I still ask him, how do you want to use me? Where do you want me to be? And what is it that you want me to do? All of the reasons that I've come up with along the way have always seemed like good reasons. They've kind of seemed level-headed. And then that's where I've realized that maybe, like the men who took the talents and took a risk, maybe he's asking you to take a risk. I know that he's asking me to take risks. And I know that I choose to not hear what's going on so much. But I'm tired of being stuck. I'm tired of this complacent area that I've grown content. I don't want to be content anymore. I want to ask him for a passion that he put in me the first time that I met him. You see, none of this is possible outside of a relationship with him. It's okay, like, if you go to church and you do these things, it feels good. There's this step further that's a little bit riskier if you want to put your walls down and say, those things are good, God, but I need more. I need to lay down my fears, my walls, my insecurities so that I can let not just other people in, but I need to let you in. And when you let him in and you choose to recklessly follow him, it all changes. Yeah, that fear might still be there, but it doesn't have control. It isn't keeping me stuck in one place. That fear no longer is my leader, but I've chosen to put him as my leader. It all changes when you're willing to just lay it all down and say, what adventure do you have for me today? You don't even have to look at next week or the week after. All you have to do is say, what do you have for me today? And that's going to be more than enough. You see, those baby steps, they can look so many different ways. Baby steps can look like kindness, a smile to a stranger, or maybe even stepping out and saying hi to somebody. That's scary. Chris and I had a lot of stuff that went on before our relationship with God. And so letting go of some of those things is really hard. You see, it was hard and it was scary to let go of addiction. Because in addiction, I didn't have to deal with my feelings, my emotions, or anything real. I could numb anything that needed to be. So it's scary to let go of that addiction. It's scary to let go of bitterness and anger and hurt. Because what are you going to hang on to if you don't hold on to those things? And it can be scary when you decide that you're going to look at your grief differently. It can be scary when that's where you've been for 4 years holding on to something very specific. And God is saying, I need you to let go of that so that you can move into the next part of the adventure that I have for you. And so when I'm telling you guys this, I get it. It's not easy to move into a place that feels uncomfortable. But like the men with the talents, don't you want to use the abilities, the talents that God has placed on you that nobody else can do? You don't want to miss an opportunity because guess what? Down further in this parable, he takes the money that the guy hid, and you know what he does with it? He gives it to somebody else. Now that was a wake-up moment for me because I don't want God to take what he has given for me to do and give it to somebody else. Because see, I have these 2 little humans that follow me around everywhere and expect me to feed them and clothe them and give them a place to live on a regular basis. They need me to step into the abilities that God has given me in order to raise them up. Because you see, at 9 or 10 and 5, God has placed abilities on their adventure. I am part of their adventure. I don't want to be so afraid to let go of something that God has said, let go, so that you can move forward. And that keeps me from being able to give them what I need to give them. Letting go is hard, and it's scary, and it makes you go to the next phase where you have to ask yourself, I was Chris and Brandis for so long. We did things together. We started dating at 16 years old. And there was a whole lifetime that happened in that process. And then when it all changed, I got complacent in a place of grief and mourning and hurt. And I decided that that's where I was going to be. I came to this place where I was like, well, I guess this is what it looks like. Until he showed me this. Until he showed me that I was using an element of fear, excuses and reason that sounded great, but they weren't truth. I was using those to just stay in this place. And so now he's asking to let go of that. The fear comes from the fact that I have no idea what that looks like. Part of why I didn't even want to share that part with you at all, because I don't know what that looks like when I choose to let go, when I choose to let him take care of everything, when I choose to lay down my fears for his adventure. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but that's the point. You see, I don't have to have it all neat and tidy in this little bitty present and hand it to you and say, here, this is what it looks like if you'll do all of these things. No, that's the freedom that you have when you choose to put God first at the front of your path and follow him. His ways are better. His ways are greater than you could ever imagine. And when you choose to follow his ways, there doesn't need to be fear. In 2 Timothy 1:7, he tells you, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. There is power when you choose to follow him. You see, when you choose to follow him, it takes out all of the risk. Because when you hear his voice, the reason that he's calling you, the reason that he's telling you these things is because he's already equipped you, or he's going to equip you in the process as you step out on the adventure. So you don't have to even feel like you're taking a risk. If he told you to do it, he's already doing everything that you need in order to get the job done. See, in Deuteronomy 31, he says, the Lord goes before you. He will be with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Do not fear. And so as I was trying to work through a lot of this, what is there to worry about? Why would you ever be afraid to let go what is keeping you stuck in complacency? If you know that the next step you take is because you heard God's voice and he told you to do something, and that regardless of what he's going to tell you, failure is not an option. You see, when God tells you to step out and do something, failure is not an option. I think after we've been stuck in these places for so long, when you've been stuck in your hurt and your heartache, your anger or bitterness, you get stuck in this place, and I really stopped dreaming. I stopped hoping, and I stopped wishing, because all I wanted to do was get through today. But when you let go of your fear and you start to hear his voice, start asking yourself the question, what does my adventure look like if failure is not an option? How big can I dream? What can this look like? And then it starts to come in and you're like, I can't do that. But you're reminded, yes, you can. If he has put it in your heart, then he is already equipping you to do exactly what it is that he needs you to do on his adventure for him. And so I want to challenge you guys. There's a story in Mark 9. Forgot where I was going, sorry. So there's a story that a man brings his son and he needs to be healed. Obviously, he's bringing his son to be healed because he knows that Jesus has been spoken about and Jesus has a healing touch. And so he obviously believes that it's possible if he gets his son to Jesus that he's going to be healed. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And so when he's there, he tells them, help me with my unbelief. I believe. So you're here for a specific reason. Today, you're searching, you're looking, you're needing. And so if you tell him daily, I believe that you are the one that can change this whole game. I believe that you are the one that will make this adventure your adventure. Help me with my unbelief. That changes it. That's telling him, that is letting go of my fear. That is letting go of the walls that I've put up around me, because guess what? He knows what's inside of your heart anyway. So once you start to confess it out loud and give the power to him, for him to move into your situation, to do what it is that he needs to do, it changes the game. So you tell him on a daily basis. Maybe it's moment by moment. Sometimes where you're at, it has to be over and over and over. But you tell him, I do believe that you're the only way. Help me with my unbelief. Help me to step out. Help me to take the risks that I need to take for you, for what it is that you're equipping me for. Because there are people along my adventure that need to see me let go of my fears. And guys, for me, it's my children. My children have to see that it's okay to step out and listen to God's voice and move. And sometimes what you think it's supposed to look like is not his adventure. 4 years ago, I had no idea that the adventure I was on, that I was passionately pursuing for him, for his glory, was going to look completely different than what it does today. I had no idea 4 years ago that my husband was going to pass away. And right then I stopped because I thought that's as far as it went. But you see, if God already knows exactly what it is that's on my adventure, he knows exactly what's on your adventure. And so you can't stop moving. You have to keep seeking, asking him, and be willing to let go of your fear and step out into the risk. And know that when you hear him, failure is not an option. Let yourself dream. Let yourself be willing to think bigger than what you're thinking today. And if you're already thinking that, then here's the deal. You've got to start sharing it with somebody. As stuff has started happening lately, I know that I have to tell somebody, because I can very quickly tell myself, that's probably not really going to work, so you should do something else. I can convince myself that maybe what God just said to me isn't what I need to be doing at all. And so when you take the words that he tells you and you share them, maybe that's a word that somebody else on the adventure needs to hear at a given moment. And when you share it with them, together you're stronger. Together, you can move forward. And the main thing is, when you start sharing that kind of stuff, there's some accountability there. You see, when I called my friend because I was trying to convince my kids that I didn't want to go somewhere, my friend knew that it was something that I was supposed to be doing. My friend knew that I needed to be at that place at that moment, and she was not letting me chicken out. So accountability is so important. I just want to encourage you guys to just go over and read Mark 9 and just ask God to help you with your unbelief, because you already believe that he can change it all, and that when we hear him, failure is not an option. I want to be sure that whenever God says, what did you do along the adventure with this and with these talents and these abilities, I want to hear that I was a good and faithful servant with all that he has trusted me with, based on my own abilities, where I'm at on this adventure. And so, if you guys will stand.